Execution methods throughout history have often reflected the values and priorities of the societies that use them. Some were designed to be fast and public, others aimed to be terrifying or humiliating. One of the most infamous devices ever developed for execution was the garrote machine, a deadly tool used mainly in Spain and its colonies. This device, which tightened a metal collar around a prisoner's neck, was not just a method of killing. It became a symbol of state power and control, used for centuries to eliminate criminals, rebels, and political opponents. The word garrote originally comes from the Spanish term garrote vil, meaning vile garrote. In medieval Spain, a garrote was simply a cord, rope, or piece of cloth used to strangle someone manually. An executioner would loop it around the victim's neck and twist it with a stick until the person suffocated. By the late Middle Ages, the Spanish authorities were seeking more controlled and official ways to execute people. Manual strangulation was unpredictable and often messy, especially in public. So during the 16th century, Spain developed a device to make the process mechanical, the garrote machine. This was a move towards a more standardised, efficient execution, just as the guillotine would later become in France. The garrote machine was a wooden or metal chair with a tall post rising from the back. At the level of the prisoner's neck was a sturdy iron collar attached to a screw mechanism. Behind the post was a handle or large screw that the executioner could slowly turn. When the condemned person was seated and strapped in, the iron collar was locked around their neck. Then the executioner would turn the screw, gradually tightening the collar. Depending on the design, the collar would either strangle the prisoner by compressing the neck and airway, crush the vertebrae at the base of the skull, breaking the neck, or do both at once. Some garrotes had a sharp metal spike embedded in the collar or the screw's head. This spike was aimed at the spinal cord at the base of the skull. When the screw was turned, it would pierce the flesh and sever the spinal cord. This was considered the quickest form of garroting, as it could kill almost instantly, at least in theory. The executioner's skill and the condition of the machine mattered a lot. A well-maintained garrote with a sharp spike could break the neck or sever the spinal cord swiftly, causing immediate unconsciousness. A poorly maintained one might only strangle the victim, leading to a long and agonising death. Now, garroting was generally done in public squares or in prisons. In Spain, executions were often staged in front of crowds, sometimes as moral warnings or political statements. Here's how a typical garroting might proceed in the 18th or 19th century. Firstly, there was the procession of the condemned. The prisoner was led from their cell to the execution site, often accompanied by priests, soldiers, or civil guards. Prayers or last rites were common. Next, there was seating at the garrote. The condemned person was seated on the wooden chair and had their hands tied. Straps or clamps secured the body to prevent movement. Then there was the fitting of the collar. The iron collar was placed around the prisoner's neck and locked to the post. This ensured that there was no escape or wriggling free. Then there was the final turn. At a signal, the executioner began to slowly turn the screw at the back. Depending on the design, this would either tighten the collar or drive the spike into the neck. Then death would come. If the spike hit the spinal cord correctly, death could be almost instant. Otherwise, the victim would be strangled or suffer neck fractures, which could take minutes to kill them. Then there was the aftermath. Once the condemned was dead, the body was left often on display for some time. In some cases, it would be removed quickly to avoid unrest in the crowd. Spain used the garrote as its official method of execution from the early modern period all the way to the 1970s. It became the primary method for executing civilians, especially after public hanging fell out of favour. Some notable examples include political prisoners. During the 19th century, Spanish authorities executed several political dissidents, revolutionaries, and anarchists with the garrote. It became a symbol of repression. Also, it was used in colonial use. In Spanish colonies, including the Philippines and parts of Latin America, the garrote was exported as the standard execution device. The Filipino nationalist Jose Rizal was executed by a firing squad in 1896, but at the time the garrote was still being used for other prisoners. Now, the last execution using the garrote in Spain was that of Salvador Puig Antich, a Catalan anarchist, and his execution took place on March 2nd, 1974. His death caused international outrage and symbolised the brutality of the Franco regime. By the mid-20th century, many Spaniards and international observers saw the garrote as cruel, outdated and an inhumane method. It was abolished officially after Spain's transition to democracy in 1978. Accounts of garroting vary. In some cases, the death was reported as instant and painless, especially when the spike design was used. But other reports describe grim scenes of prisoners gasping, convulsing, and slowly suffocating as the screw was turned. An eyewitness to an 1850s garroting in Madrid wrote, "The screw turned slowly, and the man gave a convulsive shudder. His tongue swelled and his eyes bulged. The priest held up the crucifix before his failing sight, and within 2 minutes all was over." However, 2 minutes could feel like an eternity for the condemned. In some botched executions, it reportedly took 5 minutes or more for the prisoner to die. The unpredictability of this added to the fear and horror of the garrote. The garrote machine was preferred over hanging in Spain for several reasons. Firstly, it was considered more dignified because the prisoner remained seated rather than dangling. It was also easier to control the process, as there were no misjudged drop lengths or decapitations like in hanging. And it could also be used indoors or outdoors in small spaces, unlike gallows which required height. But above all, the garrote became a symbol of Spanish justice and state power. Like the guillotine in France, it represented an official, bureaucratic way of killing. It also sent a clear message to the public. The state had a mechanical, impersonal way to execute its enemies. By the 20th century, the garrote was widely condemned by human rights groups. Although Spanish officials argued that it was quick and humane, photographs and eyewitness reports told a different story. After Francisco Franco's death in 1975, Spain underwent democratic reforms, and in 1978, the garrote was officially abolished as a method of execution. No executions of any kind have been carried out in Spain since then. Today, garrote machines survive only as museum pieces, a chilling reminder of how the state once executed its own civilians. The garrote machine was a grim innovation in the history of capital punishment. It transformed a manual form of strangulation into a mechanical process, turning execution into something both ritualised and industrial. Used for centuries in Spain and its colonies, it left a legacy of fear, controversy, and political repression. Though intended to be efficient and even humane, the garrote was anything but. Its victims faced the terror of being strapped into a chair, their necks gripped by an iron collar, and their lives ended by the slow turning of a screw. Today, the garrote machine stands as a powerful reminder of how technology can be used not only to save lives but also to take them, and of how societies have continually sought to systemise even the act of execution itself. Thanks for watching. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe, and once again, thanks for watching.